On today's Starting Nine, we give you guys an entry-level understanding of MLB salary arbitration and all the hearings coming up. Why do the Mets care so much about $1.5 million to Jeff McNeil? And who's the best club at saving money this time of year? We get another wave of sentimental roster moves, some lingering drama with the Carlos Correa situation, and a whole group of MLB players can now finally call themselves rich. Let's have a great show. Action! Welcome back to Starting Nine. Carl here in Chicago. A thickly bearded Jake Arrieta in Texas. Thickly bearded. If you're on your YouTube page, you're surprised with how well the underbrush is coming in. Welcome to the show, bud.
What's happening, man? Yeah, I don't know if it's just by accident, how I slept on it. I did take a shower for the first time in a couple days this morning. We were out at the ranch, so there's not many opportunities to shower out there just yet.
A couple days.
Yeah, 2 days without a shower. But we have these, I think they're called bathing wipes. So it's like a horse bath. You know, you get just in the crevices, under the pits, and you're good to go for the day. It's kind of part of the ranch life. And we're in between renovation of the cabin. So there's really not a shower out there. Make it work.
I got a buddy who slings those wipes. Shout out, Dude Wipes. All right, we have a bunch of stuff to get to the show. Arbitration news, general news, some fun stuff. Some very fun stuff. But I should bring to your attention, you went viral this weekend. The Pitching Ninja had put out a compilation of your no-hitter against the Dodgers with some overlays and stuff. I think it almost got 2 million views. Your commentary on this. You went viral this weekend at the ranch.
Yeah, a buddy of mine sent it to me, and it's always fun to rewatch that tape. I think some guy commented like that the most egregious use of balls was letting me like throw with a wiffle ball or something like that. And some of that shit did look like a wiffle ball, didn't it?
What if they went back and tested your balls? And they
them?
said, "Whoa, this guy's balls are off center."
They felt normal. I don't know. They weren't hitting them at all. I think there was one that was almost a hit. But other than that, it was pretty routine no-hitter. I don't know. I don't know.
Pretty routine no-hitter. Clip that.
Pretty
Colin,
routine.
Please. We have
hopefully nothing comes out where they're like, oh, these balls were, the drag was way different than previous games, and we were just seeing what would happen, and then there's an asterisk next to my no-hitter. So wouldn't that be great?
No, don't lose sleep over this.
I won't. No, it was a cool video. I liked it. You know, I was pretty good for a little while, and then until I wasn't.
The Ninja's a special guy in the baseball community. I believe he's a lawyer. I think he's possibly retired now, or
retired lawyer that just loves the game of baseball.
Yeah. See, there's a little bit of this game for everybody. A path for anybody who loves it that much. A lot of stuff, like I said. Let's get into some arbitration news because it's like the big meatiest thing that's going on in Major League Baseball right now. Arbitration is unique in Major League Baseball because it's like essentially a 3 or 4 year window where you get a year-by-year salary increase or a salary negotiation.
And nobody likes it. Well, nobody wants to go to arbitration. It's one of those weird situations between the player, his representation, and the team, and it's like, okay, let's go to the table with numbers, and if we do have to go to a hearing, you know, we're gonna tell the arbiter why we're worth this number, and then the team is gonna tell you, you know, to your face why you're not. So it can leave a bad taste in your mouth. It's ideally you come to an agreement before having to go to a hearing. But a lot of players do go to arbitration. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But it's always a gamble because, you know, you pick a number, the team picks a number, and the arbiter picks one or the other. They don't say, okay, well, based on your number's 5 million and the team's number's 2 million. You know, if you can't come to an agreement, then there's a large discrepancy there. It's like you risk, you know, making $3 million less. So that's why it's nice to, you know, agree to terms before having to go to the hearing.
Yeah, that's the point, is you want to agree to terms so you don't go to the hearing.
Right.
And just by evidence of that, there's There's been 33 arbitration hearings from 19 teams. So there's 11 teams this year that aren't going to arbitration, all of their players, because they've settled with whatever arbitration eligible players there are. The thing with arbitration where you want to, you can fuck with some of these relationships in arbitration too. You want to keep the players away from the arbitration hearing. It's better to just settle as quickly as possible. But some of these teams are cheap, really cheap. Some of these teams the Padres should be going to arbitration with all their players because they got to save every $1 million they're giving out because they got so much payroll on the books. There's a lot of teams that should. Now, I'm surprised the Mets would go to, I believe, Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, but did they have a hearing with Pete Alonso? That's petty. No, Nico Horner, Ian Happ, some big names on here. Vlad Guerrero, Zach Gallen, $5.6 million. Now, a lot of players that you'll see in arbitration go, well, Zach Gallen, fucking, if he hits the market, that dude's worth $35 million a year. But this is the way baseball works. This is how you pay baseball players. You have to you literally have to earn your stripes in service years. And so there's a lot of names out here that are still earning their service time so that they can get their bigger deals. So some big fucking names. Lucas Giolito, to me, feels like he's been pitching in the big leagues forever.
It really does, yeah. So he's in his last year of arbitration?
Yeah, this will be his last season. And he had a step back. He's been dominant at times in his resurgence with the White Sox, but Dylan Cease, $5.7 million. And I believe next year he should get about 12, 13. The year after that, he should get the 22, 23, the big end. Right, huge range here. So if you see this arbitration news come out, this is an opportunity, too, where guys buy out years. You'll never see the Braves aren't going to arbitration with anybody. All those years are bought out. We talked about that with Matt Olson last week.
It's kind of a nice feeling to have as an organization, I would assume, not having to deal with that. And then, Colin sent us that link talking about like the Mets players that all went to or that settled. So 6 of 7 arbitration eligible players.
Yeah, a lot of the numbers that I read off were settled.
Yes,
a lot of settled.
And then the McNeil thing's interesting, as Colin pointed out. He filed at 7.75, and the Mets filed at 6.25. So, that's $1.5 million. The gap is $1.5 million. You would think that they could just fucking agree on that. It's not a $4 million difference.
Sets a bad precedent, though.
For who? For that
$1.5 million is a lot for. I think McNeil's in his second year.
Yeah, but let's call it a day at 6.65 or 6.7 or 7. I don't know. You would just that seems a little petty to me especially when the Mets have spent the type of money that they have. And yes, I mean, if you
can't use that argument,
the more you go over that number, yes, his salary's only going to go up. If you concede to his number or closer to his number, I don't know. It just seems a little petty to me.
He just won the batting title and was an all-star. That's why I think it's weird.
Yes.
Starting all-star, I believe.
Yeah.
Voted in, which speaks to market value. Fans love him. This isn't just a guy who got named because some manager owns somebody else a favor. No, he's a starting second base, starting all-star. You can't use any of this. You can't use the fact that Mets spend money in salary arbitration.
You can a little bit. Why?
Maybe at the very end, if they said, "Do you have any closing arguments?" Because the only people you can compare yourself to are people in arbitration.
I'm not saying that's an argument going to be used by McNeil and his representation in arbitration.
But fans and people see it and they think,
what
the fuck,
that has no ground, to stand on when you're talking about arbitration. I'm just saying that it seems silly. I understand if the gap is $2, $3, $4, or $5 million. Yeah, that's okay. We're gonna stand on our number. We like where we're at. But then again, and a lot of the times these arbiters don't know shit about baseball, really. Like they're not like
shouldn't.
They should or shouldn't.
They shouldn't, because that's how you get the independent. If you know about baseball, then you're biased. Jeff McNeil comes in and the guy's sitting there and he's like, well, I'm a huge baseball fan. I love the fact he's contact. That's valuable. Like, No, you have to make it important to the
But
arbiter.
shouldn't you?
And you
shouldn't
have
you
to
have at least a tiny understanding of the game? Like if I
the
was
more
trying to
understanding you have, then you can have bias, is what I'm saying. And the more bias there
well,
is, then like
if the arbiter is a Mets fan, that could be an issue. But like if I'm yeah, I mean maybe you're right. Like if I'm
what you're gonna
trying to hear a
get.
case, if I'm listening to a case and trying to pick a side of a subject or an industry that I just have no idea about, how am I supposed to come to a sound conclusion? But maybe you're right. I don't know. At least an elementary understanding of the game of baseball.
I think they do. I think all Americans do. Come on. I mean, the guy doesn't have to be able to explain the infield fly rule to a room full of second graders, but
Well, a quick story. When my daughter slipped and fell and cut her eyelid open during a Cubs game, like in the family room, she was fine. But I wasn't pitching that day. I heard that like something happened in the family room. I bring her down and our team doctor took a look at her. Everything was okay. We sent her to the hospital, and we wanted to have a plastic surgeon do it because the scar was so close to her eye. The guy came in and he was a complete asshole. He was like, I don't watch baseball at all. Like I read books, like implying that he doesn't know who I was or anything about baseball, which is totally fine. Don't care. But just kind of a weird deal. So not everyone knows, like he didn't know shit about the game. And he made it very clear to my wife that he didn't know anything about the Cubs. He reads books and he makes scars look very good. So my point is like maybe these guys don't know shit about the game.
they hopefully they know more than that guy.
He
That
knew
guy's got
nothing.
some major security.
Well, and
issues
look,
there.
man, like we're just trying to make sure that my daughter doesn't have a nasty scar above her eye. She's 3 years old. Like, take it easy.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to join the bowling
No,
team.
I'm really
now.
not. Really not. But long story short, arbitration is weird for teams, weird for players. I never went to arbitration, fortunately. We got close in 2000. I believe it was 2015, and I was on my way to Cubs convention, and it was just kind of a weird tension in the air that I didn't like.
Cubs convention was this weekend. So you had to sign before you went in there, or what was that? Boras calls you. He goes, "Hey, Theo doesn't want you talking to fans until
I
we
think
got you
that
under
we
contract."
agreed. I want to say that we agreed to terms like the morning of, like right before Cubs convention started. And I remember being in the elevator, about to get on the elevator, and talking to Scott and saying, "Well, this is the number that they've agreed to. We've agreed to." I'm like, "Great, let's get that done. That's a relief. Now we can just move on about our business, have a nice Cubs convention, show up to spring training, and get to work."
See, those years of the Cubs convention was great because you guys would come in a couple days before. Rizzo would throw that big party on a Thursday night. The whole team would go out for the weekend. You'd see like 20, 25 guys partying. It was like that for a couple of years in a row. I wonder if it's like that now, and I wonder if it's like that for other teams. Like I imagine when the Braves have their convention or something, I'm sure those guys get together. Interested which clubs currently in baseball like hang out the most where they would use a convention to get together, as opposed to other guys just saying, well, we'll just fucking play video games in the hotel room and get this over with. Like which teams actually want to get together and hang out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, video games is interesting. You brought that up. So many guys now play a ton of video games. I mean, there's so many streamers and so many new games, and the games are great. The gameplay is better than it's ever been. Like I don't play video games anymore, and I put the controller down because I absolutely suck ass at all of them. I'm good at Mario Kart, so if you have that, you got Nintendo 64 or Mario Party or what is it, Nintendo Switch? I'm in on that. But the Fortnite, the Call of Duty, I don't have the skill set for that anymore. And a lot of kids do, and I played with guys, and I know everybody's played with guys that like to go straight to the house after the game and dial in on whatever game of choice they like to play. Put the headset on and just kind of do their thing. But I would assume that the Cubs like to hang out, and if they don't, yeah, they're still going to know each other. But that's a good opportunity to get to know the new guys on the squad. I'm sure Dansby is going to kind of mix in very well with, with guys like Hap, and Hap as a leader. Now Hap is going to have to start paying for some team dinners. Maybe not all of them, but every once in a while he's starting to get rich. So he needs to start paying for some stuff here and there.
$11 million
That's
this year.
pretty
You're right.
good.
He is
He's starting to get rich, and maybe he has some conversation about an extension. I saw a quote from Jed, I believe, that they want to keep that dialogue open. So maybe he becomes even more rich over the next few months. We'll see. And he's not far from me. It'd be nice if he'd buy me dinner too.
Hey, how about that, Ian? Challenges out there now that you are getting rich. You're not there yet, buddy. You're getting rich.
I'd say he's there.
Yeah, he's rich.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, hey, arbitration, certainly interesting time. I would just say the three teams I would throw in the mix where I'd say I bet when the conventions roll around and when spring training rolls around, there's a little extra boys. The boys are really excited to get together, a little extra buzz. Yankees, just because we witnessed that firsthand at the All-Star game when we went into this private little concert on I think it was the Thursday night before, and there were 12 Yankees hanging out together. And they were having a blast, and it was a great mix, and it was different. I just say that it was different. Cardinals, those fucking old guys been playing together forever. They all come up with the minor leagues together. That's a culture. And then the other one, I think, randomly, I don't know why, I just feel like the Brewers. It's the island of misfits toys. They're always successful. There's a sense of pride. And talking to Matt Olson last week when he was talking about the A's and trying to flip that culture of the young guys break the cycle. Hey, young guys win. Maybe we'll go spend some money. It's interesting to get a look at that because my exposure mostly is just through the Cubs of go sign guys, and interesting to see that side. That's why I'd pick, again, Brewers, Cardinals, Yankees. Interested to know what people think if I'm wrong, or who people would say they think the closer teams are. Maybe the Mariners.
We should have a poll and try and figure that out. But I would say the Yankees are way up there. Guys like Stanton and Judge and Rizzo, big personalities, but also really good team camaraderie guys that understand how important that is to get the guys together. And really, the more time you spend together off the field, the closer you become. And I've always been a big advocate of that, is getting to know, if guys are married with kids, getting to know their wife and their kids and know their names, and try and spend some time with them. And guys always have their kids at the field early, say what's up to the kids a lot, try and build that bond, because you've been there before. It's the more you know about a guy, the more you pull for him. And if it's you just show up and you work together and then you go home and it's you never have that bond away from the field. Not that you can't be a good team on the field together, but just in my experience, things tend to be much tighter knit if you go that extra mile for the guy next to you, and there's no other way to put it. It's just that's how it goes in sports.
Well, let's close out I want to have one more point here about this arbitration stuff. I said you'd notice 19 out of 30 teams, so there's 11 teams that don't go to arbitration. Of the 33 hearings, I think it's very interesting. The Rays have 7 of them, and we should celebrate the Rays for how competitive they are, given the lack of the resources, the fact that they've got twice as many front office strategists as the Dodgers. It's a great organization, very unique. Kind of funny.
Yeah,
they got seven
hearings. Maybe they're probably most well equipped to handle arbitration cases.
Yes,
and then probably the Dodgers too. I would assume. So might be a little nervous as a player if you're with the Rays and your agent saying, hey, we're gonna go to this hearing. It's fuck, are you sure? Can we not somehow find a way to and maybe you come off of your number a little bit to not have to go to a hearing with the Rays. But that's a good point. An organization I would probably like to avoid, going into hearing with.
And they'll take say they only save 300 grand, they'll go through this entire process
to save that.
If they save 400 grand, they know exactly where they're spending it. They're going to go put it in the international market, or they'll move it around so that they get value out of this. They're not just doing this exercise so at the end of the year they can put a little bit more in a fucking, daddy's mutual fund or something. This is active savings so that they can use this cash.
No, you're right. In that,
doing.
You brought that up with the Mets, right? Yeah, look, like they have all this money and they're spending all this money, but to be able to reappropriate that money elsewhere, you're 100% right. Like there are things that teams need to spend money on that aren't just at the big league level, in minor league development or salary for different staff or buying things for their Dominican Academy or something like that, or international spending. So I'm with you there. That was maybe I spoke out of line a little bit. So
no, I think it's and then you could say dude, talking about staff, 1.5 million on the McNeil
goes a long way.
Whatever. Yeah, I think it was 1.5. Yeah, that's high quality minor league development guys. That's a couple of really high-end pitching development people, or maybe some new lab equipment and shit. So this stuff does add up. I do want to say, okay, on the subject of signings and roster movements, there's a completely off or unrelated, I should say. The Mariners signed a first base DH prospect named Marlboro Jesus. Marlboro Jesus? I don't know if that's
Marlboro
a Jesus or Jesus, but
amazing.
Yeah. I don't know anything about this guy.
Let's find out about him.
But baseball, I have an affinity for baseball names. Marlboro Jesus. Now, it'd be great if this was a kid from an academy or something, and a scout, a castaway scout, maybe some scout who got caught for corruption or moving money around. He gets banished to the Caribbean to go scout kids. And then he sees this kid, Marlboro Jesus, and he just gives him the nickname because this guy's a scout. He's just chain smoking heaters. Which reminds me, my nickname in college was Smoke Break. I didn't know that till my senior year. I said, why? And my pitching coach would call me Smoke Break. Why? He said, because every time you come in, the fucking scouts get up and go have a smoke.
That's a phenomenal story and a great nickname. Maybe not the one
Smoke
that you
break.
wanted.
No, Smoke Break stir. Here he comes.
Yeah. What was I on the gun? Well, we didn't have any guns up.
Yeah. Just take a guess. It's felt like 85 today. Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Marlboro Jesus. Some other international prospect stuff. Not really anything I want to get into. I'll say international-wise, World Baseball Classic coming up in a couple weeks. Is there a difference in spring training? Do you remember when the World Baseball Classic was going on, if teammates were playing in it? Is there any reason anybody should be complaining about, if a fan of these guys, Nolan Arenado's playing third. Oh, I don't like that. Or what is the impact for the World Baseball Classic on the guys that are playing in it? And
I don't think that there's any impact on really for position players. I think there's only upside there. You're going to see high level elite pitching earlier in spring training, and you're getting more more real game repetition. You're playing basically regular season games during spring versus, the first couple weeks at least of spring training, or, guys just getting their pitch count up. Maybe the starting nine is out there for a couple innings, getting one or two at bats. It's a lot different than that. So if you're a fan of a team where, several of your position guys are playing in this thing, there's really no need to worry. I mean, maybe the biggest argument there is that you're not getting to see, if you go to spring training, you're not getting to see those guys in the spring training games. But I think more or less it's more of a burden on the pitching staff, on the pitchers, especially the starters. They have to be ramped up and ready for let's say 65 to 85 pitches, which is I would say probably 3 weeks early than they normally would be. But, they know that going in. They know they have to be built up a little bit quicker. They have to be ready to handle that sort of workload. And all of the staffs on these teams, these different national teams, they're gonna take care of their arms. They really are. And there's pressure on the MLB teams, from the MLB teams to take care of these guys. Nobody wants to get injured. Nobody wants to see their pitchers get injured. So caution is definitely taken. But as a fan, I would think if you're going to have if there's any complaint, it's that your starting pitchers, you're worried they might not be ready for that sort of workload.
Yeah, so looking at the roster now, instant reactions about Team USA. Infield's amazing. Tim Anderson, Trey Turner, Bobby Witt, Nolan Arenado, Goldschmidt, Alonso. You've got Will Smith and Real Muto behind the plate, which is great to split games. And even if you think it doesn't matter because it's a couple games, I still like having two catchers back there. Starting pitching-wise, this is interesting. Merrill Kelly, who I very much respect, is a tough competitor, pounds his zone, mixes his stuff. Maybe not the most electric stuff, but just like an undersized righty who really attacks for the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's on there. Nestor Cortez, that is very surprising to me. Kyle Freeland, not much of a surprise. Brady Singer, not much of a surprise. Adam Wainwright, end of his career. Clayton Kershaw, end of his career. Here's one, Logan Webb. Logan Webb, very surprising, especially for the Giants and how much emphasis they put in their analytics. Interested to see what his role is. Because I don't think Logan Webb, even though what we're talking about, it's not going to impact too much, I still think the Giants will have a say in that. And then probably the guy I'm cheering for the most, the guy we met at the All-Star game, and I had to slap myself to remind myself he was a big leaguer, is David Bednar from the Pittsburgh Pirates, who looks like he is he looks like a nose guard from a Division II Wisconsin football
Dude, he's
school.
thick.
Just neck
he's super
is
thick.
So big,
Yeah.
but he's nice and he's polite and he stares you in the eyes when you talk to him. One of my favorite guys in the big leagues from what I've met and talked to. So it's a good roster. It's a good mix. But like I said, Logan Webb is a name I'd like to concentrate on here. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean he's a turbo sinker. I mean you would just assume that he's not going to go out there trying to throw the ball through a brick wall like some other guys with a four-seamer. I think that they made a great call getting him as a part of the USA staff. Maybe there's a little concern for the Giants sending him there, but they obviously gave him the okay to go pitch for Team USA. I don't know. I'm all for it. If you're able to handle the workload and the build-up process, I think that it just gets these guys ready a little bit sooner. So when opening day rolls around, they're ready to go. There's no delay. There's no hesitation. These guys have already pitched in, let's say 3 to 5, or maybe I don't know how many games they'll start. 3 to 5 sounds about right. So when March 30th or April 1st rolls around, these guys are ready to hit the ground running.
Yeah, so with spring training coming up, a lot of these roster moves are starting to slow down. The news is starting to slow down. So where are a lot of players at in their off-season timeline? Are they shutting it down? They're still working out. You're moving down to Arizona. You're moving down to, Florida. Where are players at, I guess, generally in the off-season timeline here?
Well, let's see. So it's January 16th. It wouldn't surprise me if some guys are already down there. For instance, a guy like Kyle Hendricks, who's coming off of a shoulder issue. He's 99% sure he's already in Mesa. He's already there. He's going through, I think he's at a 90-foot throwing progression. He's there working with PJ Mainville and the rest of the training staff, and he's closely monitored, making sure that he's ready to go whenever he's ready, whether it's April or May. Not necessarily sure just yet. Other guys, they're from a pitching standpoint, they're still throwing they're going through their long toss progression. They're throwing a bullpen or two every week, I would assume, two, trying to get built up anywhere. Some guys are throwing 50-pitch bullpens. Some guys might be throwing 80-pitch bullpens. Yu Darvish is probably throwing 100 pitches in his side sessions. He's got so many damn pitches, he's got to get through all of that. So, yeah, I mean, they're just starting to tighten things up. Position players are doing the same thing. They will typically report a little bit later. Pitchers and catchers are always there, let's say, 10 to 14 days before the position players roll in, going through getting ready for PFP. So what we would do is we would have a group of guys and we would be in spikes and we'd try and mimic our on-field routine that we were going to be going through in spring training. So we weren't kind of we weren't slow to kind of catch up on kind of moving around in your spikes, for 3 or 4 hours. And that's something that takes some adjusting to having spikes on for that long throughout the day. So we would do that. We'd might even shag a little bit for some of the prospects or some of the position players that were doing their on-field stuff, get in the outfield, run around, do our PFP, do our conditioning. So that's kind of what's going on. But really no different training-wise. I would assume that, guys are still working out, 4 to 6 days a week, a couple mobility days mixed in there. And then guys all kind of fill in or funnel into spring training at different times. I would usually go down about a week to 10 days early. We might go to Sedona for 3 or 4 days just to hang out as a family before spring training starts. But most guys are on a variety of programs, but getting the same type of work in as they get ready to go down to Florida or Arizona.
I would not want to be throwing 100-pitch bullpens, 80-pitch bullpens. None of that. As you're saying this, it dawns on me. The end of the World Series is early November. You don't have that much time to get better and improve. You have time to rest, then you have time to get your body ready for spring training. But that's where I kind of get lost in all right, well, if you want to get better, when the fuck does that happen? It's got to happen in season. It has to happen in spring training. You have to constantly be challenging yourself, I suppose.
If you try and analyze your season from a pitching standpoint or a position player standpoint, if there was a glaring weakness in there, those are some of the things you want to obviously spend the most time on. If you just could, for the life of you, you could not hit a fastball down and away. That's probably what you're going to work at during the offseason. If you could not spin a breaking ball when you're in a hitter's count, that's probably what you're going to work on for a majority of the offseason. And there's always things you can fine tune. Your command, your delivery can be, I'm sure, fractionally more repeatable. Even the best out there, there are times where they struggle with timing or release point, or just fill in the blank. So it can be difficult to really get better at some of those things in the off season if you don't have, let's say, the support system in place. If you're trying to do all that stuff on your own, it's a little more difficult to get better at that. But if you have a place where you train and you do all your throwing, where there's, let's say, 15 to 20 guys all there trying to help guys get better at what they're working on, then you definitely can take strides to get better at whatever is necessary. But you have to be a good self-evaluator. You can't be prideful to the point where you think all of your stuff is dialed in and everything's fine-tuned, when we all know that's not the case. I mean, we're all not, Max Scherzer or Clayton Kershaw. And even then, those guys are doing what they feel necessary to get even better than they were the previous season. Like Scherzer, he throws, I want to say he plays catch all offseason. He doesn't stop. I think he plays catch as soon as the season's over. He's still playing catch at least once a week.
Hey, you know what Pedro did? You know who he played catch with
Who?
in the offseason? Himself. He would throw the ball as far as he can, then he'd sprint to it, then he'd pick it up, throw it.
Didn't Billy Wagner do the same thing?
To it. Yeah, it's that's an incredible training routine. As simple as it gets, probably exhausting.
Very much so. Very much so. But when you talk to guys that that grew up in Venezuela or the Dominican or Cuba, they didn't have a lot of the resources that we have in the States. So they had to do things like that. And it's, you have to respect that, because with the amount of resources they had and not having, great equipment. And this is obviously when, Pedro was in the big leagues and he had money and he had resources and he could do whatever he wanted. But when you're younger and guys like that were growing up, they didn't. That's why you would hear stories of guys hitting bottle caps with broomsticks, or I know guys would have a family member throwing beans. like black beans, and they'd hit them with a broomstick. So very resourceful, and you have to be. So yeah, I mean, cool story that's what Pedro used to do, and I know that there's guys over the past that have done some things very similar to that.
Yeah, I was trying to think of how I got there though, but playing catch, whatever. It's this time of year. We got guys getting ready. It's about, let's see, I think we're 2 weeks away from the community college season kicking off. February 3rd, I believe, is the first round of college baseball games this year. There's some news I'd like to spend a little bit more time on. Obviously, Correa signing with the Twins. Now there's stuff that comes out that says Scott Boras says he just doesn't understand the Mets. And the basis of the misunderstanding is when the Giants deal fell through, Boras went to Cohen. Cohen agreed. They went through the terms. It seemed like they were on the same page about it. But then at the last second or at some point in the process, the Mets brought in the same medical opinion that the Giants relied on to turn down the deal. And so then the Mets went back and said, we don't want to do the deal, and they were relying on the same level of expertise. So it sounds like Boras is pretty frustrated. There's no new information. Why are we negotiating a new contract if you're going to rely on the same doctor? Very tough situation here for Scott Boras because, do you want to be fucking with Steve Cohen PR-wise? You missed out on this deal here, but you know how many tens of millions of dollars that guy can put in your pocket over the next decade? And so is this going to be like a little war now between Boras and
I don't think so. I mean, Scott's been doing this. I mean, hell, Dennis Eckersley was a client of Scott's. He's been doing this for decades and decades. So I don't think he's worried about anything between, coming in between him and Cohen doing business in the future. I mean, this is just kind of comes with the territory, really.
Yeah, in between the battle between the two, I would definitely take Scott Boras. No disrespect to Steve. Steve's got all the money in the world.
Not at all. Sure.
Made $1.7 billion last year in interest, I believe. All right, some stuff with the Cubs. It seems they just keep adding people. Trey Mancini to the Cubs. Now, he'll play some DH. I think he can have a cup of coffee in left field. Hope not with Ian Happ out there, but a little first base. Everybody likes Trey Mancini, Notre Dame guy. Can go either way depending on who you are, but Trey Mancini.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs have the development of a nice team, going right now.
Former Orioles do very well with the Cubs.
I think you have to be pretty optimistic if you're a Cubs fan with what you're seeing from the front office.
Yeah, now people are saying, well, they signed all these people. Can they win? Can they win more than 81 games? We will see. We will see.
Why not? Why not? I mean, what do you think? If you go through the roster up and down and even their pitching staff, I mean, it's not a bad team at all.
It's deep. They've got depth across the pitching staff. I don't know if anybody's electric per se, but they do have a lot of options. And that seems to be valuable. It can be an Achilles heel. Because if the Brewers have any type of nicks to their front, their front three guys, or the Cardinals lose a corner infielder, and I hate to cheer against it, just saying 162, this shit's going to happen. For the Cubs to compete in the division, I think they're going to need to get some help from these other teams where, Goldie misses a month and, there's just kind of this, teams can't really get hot and catch their stride. Otherwise, it's just going to be hard to get out of third place. And I think you just have to accept that.
Well, I don't think anybody's going to accept that in Chicago. I mean, from the leadership with David Ross and Ian Happ. I mean, Dansby Swanson coming into camp, and Marcus Stroman, the competitor he is, Jameson Taillon, coming from the Yankees. Like, a lot of these guys have a certain pedigree that that's going to carry over into this uniform with them. So maybe from the outside looking in, that's kind of the outlook that certain people would have. But I assure you that when that group shows up to spring training, I mean, they're going to be set. Their mindset is going to be on winning. And I think it's possible with the group they have. It's a tall task, that's for sure. But it is every season. I mean, it's never easy for anybody. Even the front runner to win the World Series has to go through a lot of instances during the season where some of their best guys are banged up, or the starting pitching isn't performing up to their standards, or they're without a couple of their bullpen pieces, or there's underperformance there, and it happens every season. So this is going to be no different. And I mean, the Cubs are definitely better than they were last year.
And we talked earlier in the show about teams that are really close. Maybe this Cubs roster isn't right now because they're still getting to know each other and haven't played. But when you bring up these names, Ian Happ and Dansby and Nico all getting together, they do strike me as a team that can tap into that competitive advantage of being very close to leadership. Having David Ross manage these guys, it all hits a little bit different when you consider the mix. Guys needing second chances. Some guys playing for contracts, some guys playing for.
Yep. Yeah, and there's motivation from all different angles, like you just said. Some guys are trying to prove that they belong at that level. Other guys are trying to play for an extension. Some guys are coming into a new organization to prove themselves that they are worth the money that they signed for. So, when you have a combination of all that and you come together and you're all pulling on the same side of the rope, cliche as it is, that's what it takes, and it doesn't always, it's not always required to have the most talented, the most gifted team to win ball games.
Let's stay in the NL Central for a second. Andrew McCutchen's going back to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Pittsburgh Pirates are also rumored to be pursuing a Juan Soto-like trade package for Brian Reynolds. That's an organization going in two completely different ways. Bringing McCutchen back, sell some tickets, get some people out for McCutchen Day, some nice tributes throughout the year, which he absolutely deserves. By far one of the best Pittsburgh Pirates of my lifetime, if not the best. But the Brian Reynolds stuff too, that's so weird because they built winners around McCutchen. Sure, they had other top picks come up, but McCutchen was a player, MVP, center fielder, the fucking rock of that team. And now you've got a really good player in Brian Reynolds. It's just this dichotomy of let's bring back Andrew McCutchen, short deal, celebrate him, give him all these plate appearances. Meantime, we want to get rid of Brian Reynolds. It's such a shitty position to be a diehard Pirates fan right now.
Yeah, it's frustrating when you have a player like Reynolds that actively is trying to actively get out of Pittsburgh. I don't even know what you tell the fans. When you have when you sign Hayes to the extension, and you have a player with such high promise as O'Neal Cruz, and then you have Reynolds. It's just, what do you say? What does the ownership say? What is their Pirates convention or whatever, their fan fest? What does that look like?
They get up there and they say, you personally, Jake, you fucking killed that organization. They have a whole exhibit where you can go up and you can just throw darts at Jake Arrieta, a cutout of you. I think that's how the Pirates fans should be walking around.
Well, it was me, and then wasn't it? Didn't they have to? They had to go up against Bumgarner the year before or the year after. So yeah, I mean they got dealt a pretty shitty hand 2 years in a row. But fuck, man, that's how it goes.
And it's tough because if Pittsburgh were to ever figure it out, I hope they get put up for sale. That ballpark, the setting, the fans, the people of Pittsburgh rally so hard. It's just a great venue.
It's a great venue. It's a cool city too. It really is. But it's just that crutch that's always leaned on. We're a small market. We can't afford this. We can't afford that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a sense of baseball is a community game. I really think Pittsburgh stands out as a unique community within the game of baseball. We could stay in the AL Central just for a minute. I don't like to see this news. The Twins are going to an arbitration hearing against the AL batting champ, Luis Arias, and they're doing that in conjunction of giving – this is a bad look for the Twins. Guaranteeing $200 million to Carlos Correa when two other teams don't want anything to do with them, and then getting into $1 million dispute with your AL batting champ. That $1 million you're going to fucking need. Come on, pat him on the back and say you're worth 6.1. Meantime, they did extend Chris Paddock $12.5 million, 3 years. Some roster moves now going on for the Twins. We're early this winter. Nothing was going on with the Twins. Now they're starting to shape up.
Well, yeah, just real quick on the Correa thing, and we touched on it in one of our last shows, but it should it should make you feel a little more comfort knowing that the Twins had Correa all year last year. They know him better than anybody else, regardless of the physicals that the Giants did on Carlos Correa and the Mets did. Unless there was something that happened in between, the end of the season to the physical that we don't know about, which I don't think there was. Does that make sense though? Like the Twins know Correa better than anybody, and they obviously felt comfortable enough to get this deal done. And if you're a Mets or if you're a Twins fan, it's like, look, we just got Correa for a discount. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, the problem with the Twins spending a lot of money on a player with health issues, though, is if he does have something, the Twins are not going to go out and get another high-caliber shortstop to offset that. The Yankees would. If the Yankees spent money on somebody and it went south, they'd be fucking unloading that next winter. And not to say maybe back-to-back winters unloading, but for the time that the Twins have Correa, I don't think you're going to see another huge, massive name on the roster. Like, this is it with Correa, so to your point, if they do know him very well, hopefully they're not wrong about anything. I want to pull up a note, too. I'm sorry. I saw this note. I think it's interesting with the Rays. We talked about how, petty the Rays are in arbitration. Okay. One of their players filed for 1.3. The Rays turned around and filed at 1.175. That is a $125,000 difference that the Rays are willing to go through an arbitration hearing for. Just goes to show you the extent of pettiness that's in Major League Baseball at this time of year right now. So I should have brought that up when we were talking about arbitration.
That I would hesitate to go to arbitration with, based on their track record of understanding, the analytics and just the ins and outs of the game of baseball financially. A scary proposition. But if you're that player, it's like, what the worst that could happen is that I lose, $125,000. It's not $2 or $3 million, but moving forward, it's a knock on your salary, at least a little bit.
We're going to stay east for a second. I fucked up talking about the Braves earlier. You're not going to find any Braves names. Yes, you are. Max Fried. He's going to arbitration hearing against his team. I think they're like $1.5 million. Last year it was for $200,000. They still went. He's back at it again. Good luck to him. Let's stay in the East. Tommy Pham reported to be signing with the Mets as their fourth outfielder. The Mets were looking at McCutchen. McCutchen's going back to the Pirates, obviously. We just talked about Tommy Pham, fourth outfielder for the Mets. Do you like Tommy Pham on the Mets?
Yeah, I like Tommy Pham. I like him as a guy too. I know he's kind of got a checkered past a little bit, but dude, he's a competitor. At the end of the day, he is a good dude, even though he's done some weird shit. He just hasn't performed up to his ability. When I was in San Diego with him, I know he was going through some issues with his eyesight. I don't know if he's completely figured all that out. But his physical tools are there. When he was in St. Louis, man, he was a really probably the toughest out in the lineup for me. And I know he's kind of dropped off a lot kind of from where he was there. I mean, I want to say was it 2017, I think he hit 300 or around 300. Really good player, tough out, could really hit a fastball. So we'll see where he's at. But there's a lot of ability in there that he just hasn't showcased, for one reason or another. And I just alluded to one was, if you can't see properly, it's hard to hit at that level.
I like the guy a lot. I mean, I think he's a spark plug competitor, and if you put him in a situation where you don't really care about the bullshit, sure, that stuff's going to come up when he was with the Reds, right? That's more of an opportunity to focus on that stuff. You can put him with the Mets where everybody's just running and humming, and he can click in his competitive nature. That's a guy who can sit on the bench for 2 days and then show up on the third day and just be as tough as he was on the Friday night. He's a bulldog. So whether or not the Mets need that, they're very talented. You know, when you're that talented, do you need a guy like Tommy Pham in there as a fourth? Like, does that start becoming a risk? I don't think so because they're that good and that veteran established. Like, when you have Scherzer and Verlander walking around the clubhouse, I think it's a little bit easier to, more of a luxury than to be able to put a guy like Tommy Pham as a fourth outfielder. But if you're a team that's rebuilding or in this kind of 500 cusp and you're looking at him as a fourth outfielder, maybe it doesn't make as much sense as it does with the Mets, and especially with Buck Showalter managing him. You know, we could be talking about Tommy Pham having a
Great point. Yeah.
Even if it's like, I don't know if he's eligible for comeback player of the year, like what the exact criteria is for that. But yeah, I mean, he could have a fucking great season for him. Passionate.
Yeah, I mean,
say that. Yeah.
he's super physical. You know, when he's right, he's a good player. Yeah, and being managed by Showalter and having and not that he needs, you know, to be policed or necessarily needs like a certain veteran presence in the clubhouse for him to kind of acclimate appropriately to a staff or to a clubhouse. But it doesn't hurt to have guys like you just mentioned in that clubhouse with him and to be managed by Buck Showalter. And if anybody can get, you know, the best out of a guy like Tommy Pham, you know, it's Buck Showalter and, you know, guys like Scherzer and Verlander, and being around, you know, guys like Lindor and Alonso and McNeil. So it's I think it's a great landing place for Tommy Pham.
And Buck knows how to talk to guys, right?
Oh,
so
better,
it's not
just
it's
as good
it's
as
more
anybody.
than like you said, policing. Like, no, it's not about this environment of like Tommy Pham's gonna play harder or better now because Buck's here. It's more about having a better relationship and him looking at a guy like Tommy Pham being like, listen, I've been managing 28, 30 years in the big leagues. You know, however unique your personality is, it ain't. You know, like I've managed a dozen, 2 dozen, whatever it is. The longer you're around the game, the easier it is to walk in a room and say shit like that. There's 2 other players I want to draw attention to, one more than the other. 2 lefties that are in the market, Andrew Chafin, that people like, fan favorite, fun guy. You know, yeah, he buys into social media stuff. He's very accessible at peers. And then the other guy, Matt Moore, who's a very highly regarded prospect, came up in the Rays organization. I believe he competed one season for like Cy Young consideration, maybe injuries here or there, had a resurgence with the Giants. He was on those Giants teams you guys competed against in the 16 NLDS. And then
went to Japan there for a second, didn't he?
Yeah, he's back as a reliever, and my cousin's a diehard Texas Rangers fan. Shout out Thomas. And he's just been in my ear about Matt Moore throughout the last year. Like, hey, you got to watch this guy. He's got a resurgence. He's really good. He put up a phenomenal 2022. People haven't really talked about him at all. So if you see your team, this is like a message to people, the audience. If you see your team lurking around Matt Moore, electric lefty, gets out, strikeouts, hard to hit, or Chafin, those are great additions to a bullpen. Like to see where those 2 land.
100%, 100%. Really enjoyed my time with Chafin. We were locker mates, and just a great guy. Ultimate competitor. Doesn't give a shit. Wants the ball all the time. You know, and he is your he's your prototypical bullpen guy, lefty, Jerry curl, mustache, drives around old Trans Ams or Firebirds. And just a dude. And then Matt Moore, you know, maybe his role, the best role for him is in the bullpen. And you alluded to the year that he had in 2022 last year, 1.95 ERA, in 75 innings. He still has a lot of ability. So I like the call on Matt Moore, and he probably needs to stay in the bullpen at this point in his career.
And that's okay. We see it time and again, man. Andrew Miller was considered one of the top left-handed starting pitching prospects of my life, or at least in my young adulthood when he was coming up. Struggled a little bit there. Then obviously he was like a freaking legend out of the pen. Legend.
Yeah, I mean there's no fucking like perfect script for these kind of things. It's not like, okay, you're going to be a starter your whole career. You're going to be a bullpen guy. Some guys make the transition. Look at Daniel Bard. Daniel Bard was very, very similar to Miller. You know, supposed to be just a lights out starting pitcher, and ended up, hitting some roadblocks along the way, and had a tremendous resurgence in his career, and came back and is now again an elite reliever, and signed a couple-year extension with the Rockies. So something similar could happen with Matt Moore, and if he's healthy, I mean, he's going to be going into his 12th season in the big leagues, and it's up and down, up and down. But can he, maybe he can kind of, bottle up what he had last season out of the bullpen and kind of keep rolling with that.
Would like to see it. Like to have the clip out here now so that people know I was talking about Matt Moore on what is this show? It's January 17th, Tuesday. Subscribe to the show. I want to close. Here's a quick, cute, fun thing. Gabe Kapler is like in the DMs for the Giants, and some Mariners fan DM'd him. He said, "You're going to love Mitch Haniger. Not only is he baller, but his work ethic and dedication will wow you." Kapler responded, "Cool message. How do you know?" He said, "Because I'm a Mariners fan and I'm very sad to see him leave." Kapler responded, "Respect, period." Then screenshotted, posted it to his Instagram story. The day I thought I'd see a Major League Baseball manager interacting with fans on Instagram, then sharing
DMs.
it. What?
Yeah.
Somewhere like Sparky Anderson's rolling over in his grave, and Casey Stengel just fucking sent Goose Gossage. I don't know. Somebody's getting hit here. Somebody's getting hit here in heaven, in baseball heaven. The baseball gods will react to this in some way, I imagine. Or is this Gabe Kapler's personality? Is this just the type of guy
That's his
he is?
personality, yeah. But it's nice to see. It's refreshing to see an interaction between a manager and a fan of an opposing team like that. That's not just your fucking toxic shit talk and just a bunch of BS. And that's why most people don't respond to any DMs. And in my during my time in Philly, there was this one dude that just would always DM me, and I would go back and forth with him. I don't give a shit about that. But it was always negative. Always. And it wasn't surprising. But then towards the end of our dialogue, which kind of stopped, I mean, we would even kind of go back and forth up until like last year at times. And like, I said some things to him. He said a bunch of shit to me, but then like it started to become friendly. And I would kind of remind him, I'd be like, "Hey, do you remember like what you used to like, the things you used to say? Like, and now you want to be nice guy." So it's weird. Maybe he turned a new leaf, and I know he's got at least one kid or two kids, and but it's just for the most part, the shit that we get is negative. So guys don't tend to kind of partake in the DMs. But I'll give this guy credit. Like he kind of turned the corner, and so a lot of our dialogue near the end was pretty positive. So
There's great friendship can be born from early conflict.
Sure. Yeah, and I totally understand like the fans, vitriol towards players when it's when there's a lot on the line, and fans are passionate, but yeah, I had no problem with chirping back at him, and man, he would get pissed because I would say things to get under his skin. It's almost like we knew each other in person when we didn't, and our interactions were pretty comical. I'll show you if they're still on there. I'll show you some of it. But yeah, then he, maybe I struck a nerve with him, and he started being nice. So
yeah. At some point, the troll, it's like, no, he realizes like, yeah, this guy's. I'm not gonna call you normal, but he just sees there's a regular guy on the other end.
Yeah, and I tried to reiterate that to him at a certain point. It's like, dude, I throw a baseball for a living, and I try and be as good as I can at it. But at the end of the day, we're just two dudes. Fucking.
Colin, do we miss anything? Can you play a little Tony Reale for us?
Yeah.
Do I have any it's like, do I got pizza sauce on my face right now?
No,
Is
you
there
look
something
good.
I'm glaring missing?
No, the face looks good today.
Perfect. Oh, the lighting in the room's
well, it looks
impeccable.
clear. It looks clear. There's no blemishes that I can see from here.
Appreciate that. No, I had been, rest, relaxation, mind, body, spirit, it all works together. I got some good sleep over the weekend. Sleep's tough, man. The
It's
older you
hard to
get, the
sleep.
harder to sleep is come by. Yeah.
You're right about that. A lot of responsibilities.
What else we got, pal? NFL playoffs are here. Hope everything's well. Hope resolutions are still intact. I say that because I worked out recently, so not a big deal. But
I worked out this morning with the kids, and I'm trying to get them to start doing things on their own without having to be told, like to take better care of yourself. Be mindful of what you're eating and still be a kid. Like, have some sugar. Don't care. Do your thing. But, take notice of your decisions. If you eat like shit early in the day, let's clean it up as the day progresses. We can't just eat shitty all day, every day. You have to mix in some things in there that are a little bit better for you. Kind of take notice of the protein in your carb intake. Just if you do it at an early age, it becomes easier as you get older.
And here I am burping up a gyro from yesterday, but
That's
it was
okay.
a good gyro. It was a good gyro. The lamb meat hits, roasted lamb.
Oh, it's so good.
Too.
So good.
A little crispy too. And then this week I'm going to Paso Tiempo and Pebble Beach with a group of the boys. So we got like 15 guys going out there. It's a long story. Maybe I'll tell it on Thursday's show, but very excited. It's been a long time coming. This trip's like 10 years in the making.
Nice, man.
And finally just pulled the trigger on it. So
cool. Well, I told you I need a Paso Tiempo hat. One of the best logos in golf. So I'll Venmo you $80. I'm sure the hat's $80.
Yeah, these fucking pro shops aren't cheap out there on the West Coast.
Yeah, it's wild.
So with that in mind, we would appreciate if you guys would subscribe to the show, send it to an uncle, send it to a loved one. This is starting 9, spring training, World Baseball Classic, bunch of stuff's around the corner. We will be here for you. Until then, we'll talk soon.
Yes, sir.